All right. So Gabe MDV, we are here in Mountain View, California. It's been a while since we all got together, so I thought we'd just catch up and talk about what's new with life. You moved on a farm.
That's right.
You moved to Washington, not on a farm.
Not on a farm.
And we were just talking about some food and some bunch of other stuff and this idea of effort over everything. So where should we start, man? I think it's a good idea just to catch up and just literally, we were just having a conversation, so we might as well just do it while we're recording.
Yeah, I mean, I had some questions because I haven't seen you guys in a while. Love the fact that we're catching up in person. So we were taking some pictures before, and you guys just can't stop talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Oh.
Whole time.
So you just
and
got into
mosquito
it.
bites on the back of my neck.
Yeah. Well, I actually, you know what's funny is I put it on a goals board in like 2015 or 16 that I wanted to start doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I bought a gi, bought a book, and then I took like one class back in Boston. And it was on my goals board again for 2018 and 2019 to start Jiu-Jitsu again. And maybe for about the past year, I've been on and off with some privates, but for the past 3 or 4 months, I've been pretty much like all into
When
Jiu-Jitsu.
18 or 19, didn't you do a few, remember didn't we get you a gi from Roll, and didn't you do a few sessions there?
Yeah. So from 2015, I've done like a handful of classes. And in 2018, 2019, I did a little bit more, some privates here and there, but never was able to like put it all together into consistent practice, which in jiu-jitsu, at least in my experience, was the downfall. Because if you take a lot of time off between your first few classes, I just felt like I was constantly forgetting everything. And then it would be too much. And I'd be like, I'm just not motivated to go. I keep forgetting everything. But now, 30 private sessions in with a couple of different trainers and, doing the fundamentals classes, I'm catching on. And now it's getting to be more fun. Still drowning, but more fun.
It's so funny. I've definitely, and I commend you for actually committing to it now. I struggle with like being a beginner again. And I know that we always talk about how important it is. But like for me, it's like one of the most frustrating things. And there's so many things that have been like, oh, I'm going to start this. And then like, I don't give it enough time to like actually be at least good enough to like want to keep doing it. And I just like step away. So it's awesome that you found a place.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I posted something on social media the other day where it was like, I regret 15 years of doing thrusters and pull-ups just to do more thrusters and pull-ups. Like, I really do. I look back on doing CrossFit functional training since 2006, and I gave up a lot of other things to just go into the gym and train and then not use that fitness elsewhere, right? I'd be like, oh, I got to train just to train more though. Like I could have been doing so much more stuff outside of the walls of the gym and putting that fitness to use. And I don't know if you guys feel that way, but like I definitely got to a point in my own fitness CrossFit career that I was exclusively working out just to work out more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one too, right? Because if you're trying to compete in the sport of CrossFit or functional, the sport of fitness and CrossFit, that's what you got to do.
But I was never at your
Right.
I was never at your level.
So
you were
for a
another
long time,
stratosphere.
That's what I was doing, right? But then you start realizing, hey, it's just this fine balance because you come into the gym, you train here at NCFIT, and the ability that it gives you to go do things outside the walls is incredible. It's just a lot of people don't explore enough of that, right? And so it's like mountain biking, surfing, you name it. These walls provide you such a great baseline, and then you need to encourage yourself to go get outside, right? That's the hard part because it's uncomfortable to go try these new things.
Yeah.
I mean, I fell into that bucket, right? Like, you're training so hard to break 100 in the open in the Northeast region or break 200 or whatever, it's like we weren't going to be at a level, but it was so fun at the time. But no, I agree. Like there's so many things I could have been using all that stuff for that looking back on it, I didn't. And for me, it was a little bit different because it actually took like a really bad injury to kind of like shake me out of that. And now I feel like I have such a better, just relationship with exercise and fitness where now I'm just doing it to like feel really good so I can do all the other things, which isn't a sport right now. It's really just, just feeling good on the farm.
Because I'll give you an example. Back
Shoot.
to jiu-jitsu, right? Like I was on the mat yesterday or the day before, and I left. And this gentleman said to Benji, hey, I looked at that guy, he's purple belt, big guy. I could tell what I'm getting myself into, but he never gassed and he kept the exact same pace the entire time.
Yeah.
And those are attributes that the gym has been able to provide me, which is great. But I would encourage anybody that's been in the gym training hard for years to go see what else your body's capable of doing outside of it, because this is an example of where like all that hedge we built in the gym pays off big time, but you don't see it as much unless you actually go take the opportunity outside the gym.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm saying. You know, I think that fitness gave me an incredible amount of fitness and ability to do things, but there was a long time in which I was only using it to do more fitness in the gym, right? So just understanding that there can be better balance between, hey, if I'm going to come into the gym and train hard 4 days a week, that doesn't mean I need to be doing 6 days a week of training in the gym and really like crushing myself and that being my only activity. Maybe I can do 4 days and 2 days I can be doing something else, or 3 days and 3 days be doing something else, right? As opposed to just 6 days straight of coming into the gym for that purpose exclusively, just to train more with barbells, kettlebells, plates, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it makes the barbells, kettlebells, plates like exciting. Like, so for me, every day, all day, for many, many years, 3 times a day, I trained in the gym. I mean, and then, you know, or in the ocean, whatever. And then as I've kind of shifted out and I incorporate more jiu-jitsu and mountain biking, it's fun to be in the gym. So like you get a beautiful like blend. You get, maybe you're on the mat 3 days a week. You're out for a long bike ride 1 day a week, and then you're in the gym 4 or 5 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. And so it makes it like this constant idea of like new and fresh and exciting. That's the way I like to do it now.
So now that you're more regularly, you know, doing jiu-jitsu, what is your training like? What does a week of training look like generally?
I try to do jiu-jitsu 3 times a week.
Okay.
So I try to do at least 2 classes and then 1 private session. If I can do 4 times a week, that's like a huge win for me. And I was doing exclusively just privates at first to build up like some knowledge, so it wasn't feeling like I was drowning in the fundamentals classes. But then at some point, my coach, Phil, who's 10th Planet Portland, was like, hey, listen, you get into classes, start rolling with people who are your level, and you know, you can start to figure out some of these things, then we can work on stuff together. So 4 days a week would be a huge win. 3 days a week is like the sweet spot for me. And then I try to do 3 days a week where I do either like Peloton in the morning and get it out of the way early. And then 3 days a week where I'm doing like a strength and conditioning session. So there are some days where I'm doubling up on jiu-jitsu plus strength, or Peloton plus strength, or Peloton plus jiu-jitsu.
Any like full planned rest days?
Getting away from that a little bit more. So, you know, I recently wrote an article that's going up on the NCFIT blog talking about it's not extreme to work out every day. For me, I always looked at rest days, and this kind of plays into the conversation on training 6 days a week doing functional fitness, where it's like you train so hard for 6 days or 5 days or whatever. Those 2 days, you just want to be lazy and lay on the couch and gorge yourself and like not move. I'm more so looking at fitness now as like a 7-day endeavor, where if I'm not going to be doing a Peloton workout, a jiu-jitsu workout, or an NCFIT workout, I'm going to go for a 2-hour hike or a 1 hour walk with my fiance and my dog, or like move my body or do some yoga or something like that. So trying to work out 7 days a week.
I love that you brought that up, because, you know, movement should be this daily thing. And I feel like we get so stuck in the thinking of like, you know, like 3 days on, 1 day off, that, you know, people feel like there needs to be a day that's a full rest day. So yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, for me now, we're outside every single day. Like there's just stuff on the property that needs to get done. And some days I don't do a workout at all, but it might be the day that I'm most exhausted because I have to move some fence around. And that is like a workout in itself. But I love looking at it that way, right? It's like just movement. It's movement every day. Jay, what's your training look like these days?
Well, it's the same. So I try and do jiu-jitsu Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday mornings early. And I love it. I do gi and no gi. I've been doing it for a really long time. And then I incorporate NCFIT workouts. I either take class or do it on my own almost every day. And then Saturdays or Sundays, I'll also do a long bike ride, or probably just a bike ride. I rarely go out for long runs. I like to tell myself I will, but I rarely do them. But to your point, like there is, you know, for me, you know, exercise and fitness and they make me feel better, right? So I enjoy doing it, but just not every day at like this break your back intensity level. And that's the big difference, right? I've been incorporating like these 20-minute bike rides just, you know, in the garage or whatever, or in the mornings, and those are nice too. Just a nice way to clear your head, listen to a podcast, and get on ready to rock.
So question that one thing you mentioned, kind of it got in my head. You mentioned that you started doing just private lessons. So you didn't go into class.
It's a great way to start.
And I think that's interesting because, you know, in our space, in the functional fitness space, like that's something that always gets talked about, right?
Yeah.
Is how are you introducing a beginner to the type of training that we do? Did you feel that, you know, taking those privates was absolutely the right move? And then how do you see that relates to what we should be doing at our gyms for beginners?
Yeah, really good question. When I first started doing jiu-jitsu, it was way deeper and more complicated of a practice than functional training. I look at functional training as being fairly simple. Like you can teach a fair amount of the motor patterns to somebody in, you know, 10 or 15 minutes, and they could get after a workout that day with some pretty good confidence of, hey, I know what I'm doing here today. I'm going to squat, I'm going to do this dumbbell deadlift over here, and I'm going to do some jumping pull-ups. And like, they really got after it, right? And they've learned that stuff that day. In jiu-jitsu, it was completely different for me because it was like, I'm a fairly coordinated guy. I've been playing a lot of sports my whole life, been doing a lot of fitness, like I said, but it just was something, and I wrestled in high school too. So this was something that a lot of the positions were foreign to me, you know, and I didn't really know how to use my body in a way that like transferred really seamlessly into those first few fundamental classes, or, you know, just kind of feeling like it was an endless amount of material where I didn't really know where to start. I was grasping at straws, like forgetting things, going into the next class, beating myself up, feeling frustrated. So for me in the one-on-one environment, I was really just able to focus, and it made me more accountable to just showing up and being there with that one person, going over the same material for 3 or 4 private sessions in a row, just to get it down, just have a base of understanding of like what's going on at a fundamental level of like pressure and the basic tenets of the practice. And then going from there, moving into classes, you can at least like tread water where you don't feel like you're just drowning.
It's different, Gabe. You know, like at NCFIT, I'm a fan of privates. I'm also a fan of, hey, someone comes in, I believe our coaches should be good enough to be able to get that person a phenomenal experience for that day. We could scale it, we could adjust it. There's all kinds of ways we can make their experience great. And we could watch movement and encourage them to move safely by focusing on a few points of performance. Hey, I need your back to be like this. Okay, we're good, like for the most part. Jiu-jitsu, the barrier to entry is pretty high, and the amount of skills and the game of inches, it's much more in depth. And so one of the reasons why I think you're seeing a big influx from people who have been training CrossFit in particular for a long time into jiu-jitsu now, I'm seeing more and more of it. Maybe it's because I'm excited about it, so I get a lot of I get a lot of direct messages about it. Maybe it's because, maybe it's because I'm there, or maybe it's because people have been doing CrossFit functional training, and in the beginning, keep in mind of what you fell in love with. What did you fall in love with? Probably fell in love with like the more complex stuff, because we were talking about things like the butterfly pull-up, the first muscle-up, your first bar muscle-up, your first rope climb. Those things were very intriguing for certain types of people in CrossFit back in the day. Well, once you establish those skills, you develop some level of proficiency. Where jiu-jitsu really takes over, at least for me, is it gives me that exact same beginner mindset, but every single day there's a new move with a new game, and it's nice to kind of transcend. So you go, okay, you develop your new skills of CrossFit, then you develop them. Now you keep your strength conditioning at a certain level, and you're golden. But then you get this itch where you want to continue to learn new skills and try something new, and that's where I think jiu-jitsu has really great carryover to our background with where we came from.
And I think there's also the aspect, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in jiu-jitsu, like, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, there's 2 people involved that can potentially get hurt. Like, does that happen? Like, you get someone that like, you know, like, I feel like you need some personal lessons to like kind of understand the etiquette, so you don't come in guns blazing and like end up bebeing that guy. And again, I'm not talking from any experience. I'm talking from like, I guess, like what I've heard and what I could imagine going down.
Yeah, I mean, it's the white belt syndrome, and it's definitely a thing. You got to be really careful about it. So for me, you know, I've been rolling pretty consistently for 5-6 years. I'd call myself a appropriate level purple belt, meaning like I'm not at the bottom, I'm not at the top of a purple, but I'm okay, right? And when I roll with people and I see that they're wearing a white belt, it's fine. I love that. But more times than not, I know what I'm going to get compared to a blue, purple, black, or brown belt, where they're going to be they're going to be sporadic. And it's because they haven't developed their comfort yet. And that's where it gets a little scary. And so I would encourage anybody when they're starting just to kind of try and slow down. But it's very difficult to slow down because you feel so uncomfortable that you end up being very reactive.
Yeah, the decision-making process it's not there. You just don't know what to do next. So you
Right.
get put in a position where you don't know what to do as a white belt, super early on white belt, and you're just kind of flailing, or you're just kind of reaching for something that you know and scrambling to get to whatever it is that you kind of sort of remember. The other thing that I noticed is that, like, if you come into jiu-jitsu and you have a superior fitness and conditioning strength background, you probably are going to have a little bit of a leg up in that regard. Like, your gas tank and your strength might be higher comparatively to other people who are beginners, and maybe even other people who are a little bit more advanced, but their technical skills are going to be through the roof compared to where you're at. You have to pump the brakes a little bit, especially if you're coming on in with some strength and some explosiveness.
And it's hard to do that.
Very hard to do that, because somebody will touch you and you'll be like, wow, they just grabbed me pretty hard. And you might go to grab them back harder or faster, and that's where you can really see some bad stuff happen. So even to myself, like my first few sessions in and rolling with like people who weren't Phil, who's a black belt, somebody touches me who's a more advanced white belt or a blue belt, I'm like, I got a strength or explosive reaction here. And that's not the way to go about it.
Yeah, it really teaches you. I mean, and this, I don't know, we're talking about a lot of random things, but it's good because we do have a passion.
I'm learning a lot.
I have a lot of passion for jiu-jitsu because it's taught me a lot of skills that help on the mat and off the mat. The focus you need on the mat is the AMRAP mentality. You got to be fully focused on what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to get choked. That's super valuable to take that mindset and then transfer it into other things in your life. On the mat, you need to be humble. You need to tap often, and you need to tap quickly. You need to be okay with saying, hey, I got beat and it's okay. And we're going to come back. We're going to improve next time, because you learn very quickly that that's the right way to do it is it's okay to tap, and it's okay to fail as long as you then learn from that experience and you move forward. And so, for my kids, getting them into sports like jiu-jitsu is very important for me because it teaches discipline. It teaches this self-respect where you're trying to better each other. You're not trying to hurt each other. You're trying to improve each other. And I'd recommend it for anybody. And then if you come into it with a strength conditioning background, I mean, let's just put it this way. Strength is not a bad thing. You just need to learn how to control it. And anyways.
I do think how we started this discussion about jiu-jitsu and becoming a beginner again, I do think it's really important that coaches who are coaching functional training, CrossFit, that they go out there and that they learn new skills and experience
100%.
new things, because all of this stuff around us, the pull-ups, the cleans, the snatches, it can all become very germane for us, all very ordinary. We all know it. But like somebody who's coming on in, although the skills are a little bit, quote unquote, simpler than what you might learn in jiu-jitsu in your first few classes or whatever, it still can feel like drowning for those people who don't have exposure to this kind of stuff. And you have to remember that you have to pull yourself back, that this is the first time somebody might be picking up a dumbbell from the ground, or it's the first time somebody's putting a plate over their head, or X, Y, or Z. So just understanding their position has been really, really important.
Yeah, and Gabe, one more thing that I've learned as a coach, number one is I'm always trying to learn. And so then I get to see how coaches work with me. And so putting yourself in this beginner mindset is very important because of the reasons MDV summed, but also because you could see the attributes of a good coach and a not as good coach. And we've all had great coaches. We've all had some coaches who maybe were great athletes, but maybe not the best coach. And it's important to recognize, like for me at least, that complexity doesn't always have to be there to have a great coach. And I think coming into our gyms, that's something I've learned the hard way. In the beginning, I would always want to introduce people to hard stuff like snatches and rope climbs, because it allowed me to like kind of be like, oh, look at this, we can get you there. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, the really great coaches simplify movement because it is so complex and put you on a path to getting there over time instead of just throwing you in the deep end. And that's a great lesson learned.
Yeah. I mean, talk about learning new things, like having animals, and this is kind of funny. It's out of left field, but I mean, learning how to do what, me and my wife are trying to do with these little, farm that we have going on in Texas. Man,
Pigs, chickens, sheep, and what else?
pigs, chicken, sheep, and we now have 2 cows. So it's dude,
like full-size cows?
City slicker style, man.
full size cows.
Like,
I wanted to have
and you can milk them?
yeah. I wanted to have everything that like was in the like old McDonald's How to Farm book. Like that's what I wanted. I literally wanted like a little bit of everything. And it's been such a cool experience. We don't have to get into it too much, but one quick story about just like completely like beginner mindset and just being like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. So we got a lot of the animals that we brought from like other farmers and stuff. There's like really good forums. So we went to go pick up the pigs that we were going to have. And they had a whole litter of pigs, and we were getting 2 of them. And on our way there, we were listening to a podcast all about like raising animals and how they're herd animals. So like ideally you want, 2, 3 is actually better because they're very social and they do a little bit better when they're not alone. So we get there and we're like, all right, so maybe we should actually do 3. So we asked the lady we're getting these pigs from, and she's like, yeah, we have enough to spare. Like, you guys can get 3. And so we go to like load them in our truck. And these pigs were not very big. They were like this big. But the amount of just how powerful they are, and when they were this big, it was so funny because I looked at Ariel real quick, and we were like, I think we're good with 2. Like, we like immediately changed our mind.
One, right? Because imagine, how are you going to get 3 of them into the back of your truck? I guess
you put them in one by one.
Yeah, but imagine it's like having kids. If you have 2 kids, at least it's even playing field, right? 2 parents, 2 kids. But as soon as you have 3 kids, they could overrun you.
It was insane. And we were immediately like, no, we'll just take the 2. But no, it's been fun to learn something new and learn something new that you're super passionate about. I know it's kind of different, but it's been a super super cool experience, and I'm excited to learn more. Go ahead.
Oh, I have a random question for Jason at some point that I want to ask. I don't think I've ever asked you this, and this is so off topic. But when you retired from competing in CrossFit, you were at the top of your game. Like, you retired probably at the peak of your fitness. I gotta ask, man. I don't think I've ever asked, because do you ever have any regrets where it's like, man, because you finished second?
I finished second in 13 and third in 14, and then I went
team.
Yep.
And team was a whole nother thing, but whatever.
I still finished really high in the open that year too.
The year 15, you went team, you were still
doing good,
really legit. Do you ever look back and go like, man, could I have won individually in the modern era of like 15, 16, 17?
Dude, I'm a big believer in you make the best decision you can with the information you're given at the time, and you just at that point you have to trust in that decision because you just made the best decision you could. So like at that point, the best decision for me and my family was in 15 to go team because the stress was just too high for my wife and I. We had 2 kids. Dude, I would compete year round. Open, regionals, games, Team USA, additional events I would do year round. And the stress was super high. Like, Ash and I would get in, I don't want to call it fights, but dude, it was definitely an area of contention because like it was like 2 months before the games, or let's just say it was like a month before, and she'd want to go out and like have some drinks and whatever. I'd be like, hey, I gotta stay in. I gotta train right now. I gotta go get it. Every night I was late to dinner because I was sweating in the garage. Every morning I'd be in the garage banging it out, and it started to create some tension. And in the beginning, it wasn't a big deal. In 2008, we had no kids, whatever. But then all of a sudden, I'm traveling for the business. We have 2 kids, and my son was born in 2014, and so we had 2, and just created too much. So anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying, no, I have no regrets at all. The first couple times I went to CrossFit events, it was difficult.
Yeah, that's got to be tough, man.
That was difficult. But also for me, man, like going from individual to team wasn't like, it was a good change of pace, and it still kept me in the sport. And so that one wasn't that hard. It was a little bit hard, but not that hard. It was then going back to events after I had officially not competed in the open. But then at that point, it was also really easy because, dude, when Ava was diagnosed with leukemia in January, like it was just like a it wasn't even like a factor. Like it wasn't even like a thing. Like, oh, the Open starts in February. Your daughter got diagnosed with leukemia in January. Are you going to do the Open? No, I'm not going to do the Open. Like, I've been in the hospital for a month. Like, so I guess for me, even though I was at the top of my game, I have no regrets about it because you make the best decision you can at the time. And I would do it 10 times out of 10.
No, that's cool to hear. Obviously with Matt retiring and, we're into the semis or the quarters or whatever. And I was just thinking about that because Matt probably also retired at the prime of his game. Although he's won for the past 5 years in a row, the betting favorite for winning this year 100% would have been Matt if he was in the game, right? So, it was just making me think you were on this ride to do, podium, team. Could you have, slugged it out?
And then it's just like, just like anybody in life, right? What are you giving up to get that podium? And what type of sacrifice? I mean, that's what Matt talks about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, every minute of every day, every decision he made was at the goal of winning. And the challenge for me was even then, when I first got into CrossFit, there was not as much money and whatnot. Most people owned gyms and they competed for fun. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. But, as our business grew and my family grew, the competition grew, and I was lucky enough to kind of stay in the game. But dude, if I wanted to kind of stay at the top of the sport, I also couldn't be at the top with a family and with running a business. So that for me started to weigh on me, right? Especially the family stuff, dude. When you start, oh man, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten into a car after like being late with my shirt off, just jumped out of the shower because my wife's in the car honking at me. We got to go. And just that time over and over again, it only happens so many times before your relationship starts to get a little, and bro, you're in that relationship for life, man. You gotta do what's right.
One thing a lot of people I feel like don't realize is just the amount of sacrifice it takes to be the best in the world, or to try and be the best in the world at literally everything. Like, people don't see the fact that Matt and, everything you just said, like all that goes into actually trying to get to that level. Like people just see the highlights. Yeah. Right? They think it's, it's easy to get there and then it's super exciting. So, I mean, that's puts it into perspective. One question I had for you, MDV, was you mentioned the goal board. How long have you been doing a goal board? What does that look like? Is this like a December process? You're like,
long time. So, gosh, I don't know when it started. Probably 2014 or earlier. Really putting them down on paper, and sometime toward the end of the year, thinking what I wanted my next year to look and feel like.
Do you remember? Was there like one book do you remember what like got you going? I'm super curious.
No, I don't really know. It might have been something that we did at CFNE with Ben to like visualize what we wanted our next year to be, whether it was competitively or professionally. But no, I started, to answer your question, I don't remember what prompted me, but it's funny because they all started out really overcomplicated and like lists of these like really detailed and very like fine things that I wanted to accomplish. And I have a couple of them on my phone actually, because they used to be on like whiteboards or like paper, like big paper. And it's funny because there's a lot of stuff on there I still haven't accomplished, or still haven't even touched, or haven't from year to year haven't been able to scratch the surface on for one reason or another. So I was a little bit more simple with my goal setting for this year, and how I was looking at what I wanted to accomplish this year, and where I wanted to be. But I think for some people it works. Some people you can have really, really fine and detailed plans about things you want to do. For me, looking back on those years, it was just probably too much. I could have focused a little bit more. But yeah.
Jay, you have a goal board?
I don't have a goal board. No. I'm not your typical, MDV likes to write things down. I just like to, it's the whole idea of like what we've been talking about as a company, right? This idea of effort over everything, just asking yourself, hey, am I putting in the best effort? Am I really reaching my potential? And if not, let's start creating paths towards getting there, and being flexible enough too, like having kids has kind of taught me you could be rigid and you have goals, but you got to be flexible enough to kind of realize that like, the end state is in mind, but how we're going to get there might be navigating, especially as a business. I mean, dude, we had an end state in 2020 of whatever, and then COVID hit. And you got to be flexible enough to realize those type of things might happen in life and how you're going to navigate through them. So I'm more kind of like, where do I want to go like many, many years from now? And then how are we going to get there every single day is what I'm thinking about, you know?
I think that's a really cool point, because while the approaches are so different, you know, the backbone of that is that like it's your best effort forward every single time, which I think is, you know, what we're all about and why we all feel so strongly about this idea of effort over everything. You know, one thing that has, you know, served me at times, but has definitely been a detriment at times, has been almost being too rigid. So funny story, MDV, I drove him nuts the first year that I was with the company.
With Slack?
No. Well, that too, and that's another.
Monday.
That's another.
God, Monday? I haven't even been on Monday yet.
Okay, don't bring that up.
I've never logged on yet.
Don't bring that up.
But I would avoid testing workouts with MDV.
Oh my God.
Like the plague.
This
And it
guy.
was literally because at the time I was still in this like super like I want to be better at fitness, and my weakness is being strong. So all I should be doing is lifting, and any type of like conditioning is like pulling me away from that goal. So whenever MDV would be like, hey, you want to go test a workout? I'd be like, I just can't. I'm on this program. Like, just, you know, and I would give him like the most like ridiculous excuses to literally never test workouts with him. And I think we tested one together the whole time. And
It
then
was like a slam ball wall walk workout, and you died. Your soul is still somewhere on the floor.
Me and slam balls don't have a good history here at NCFIT. Do you remember that story?
No, I don't know about slam balls and wall walks.
No, just the slam balls. The first time we filmed.
Oh yeah, you
videos
didn't know how to
together.
do them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember we were demoing them or something. I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah, it was my first time ever doing a video, and it
Oh
was slam
my
balls, which
God.
I've never done before coming to NCFIT. And I'm like super nervous. I'm like sweaty. It's my first time filming a video with Jason, and he's like, you know, I'm the demo guy, so he's just saying, oh, slam balls, and I was like, all right, you know, pick up the ball, and like you let it drop, and apparently you're supposed to slam the ball and slam ball.
You just let it drop from the top?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
No.
I was
No
also-
slam, no slam,
no
just
slam.
ball.
Just ball drop.
I was also like nervous and frazzled.
We'll call him the Gabe ball drop from now on.
But the funniest thing was like, God, like Jason's facial expression changed because you try to keep the video going, but your face was just like confusion with every rep. It was really
What is this
fun.
guy doing? You know, it's funny. So MDV was on the East Coast, moved to California.
Yep.
Then moved to Southern California, Northern California, Southern California, now in Washington. Gabe, you were East Coast, Northern California, now Austin, Texas-ish area. And through COVID, we've had multiple people from our company move to different areas. And I'm curious, now that you're back in the Bay Area, how much do you guys miss it? I'm curious, when are you guys going to come back a little bit more often? Because I miss hanging out and catching up like this.
Do you want to go first?
Well, I mean, we were talking about it
Yeah.
before. Like the weather here, this is the first thing that I noticed when I got here. It's like we are so spoiled here. It's literally perfect. Like it seems like the entire year.
Yeah.
And I've only been here for 2 days right now. First thing I did was go to the ocean. It's like the one thing that.
So what'd you do when you went to the ocean? Because I'm curious. So, yeah, what'd you do? Did you just walk right in?
Yeah, so I always go and try and do 5 minutes in the cold water. That's like my minimum. I have this rule that I start my watch as soon as my knees get wet.
Wait,
That's-
so why your knees? Why not?
It
when
just
it-
seems like a
when it
good.
gets to your
It
stomach,
seems like a
right?
good spot so that it's not like, oh, I can just put my feet in and I'm already timing it. But I'm also like not going like I need to dive full in. So usually it takes me 2 minutes to like actually like fully get in, and then I have 3 minutes where I'm like pretty cold. But I did that, ran around the beach a little bit. It was like the perfect way to start the day.
Beach a little bit.
People
I like the way
definitely.
you caveated that. It's 5 minutes in the water, but 2 minutes is up to your knees.
No. That's usually. But I have this rule to myself that I start my 5-minute timer as soon as my knees
Once you
get
hit the
wet.
knees.
Yeah, that's like I can't start it before then.
And then you just walk in, do your thing, and left.
Yeah. 5 minutes.
That's a long time. 3 minutes in it's probably like 50-degree water right now.
I mean, man, I can like talk about this for hours, but the cold water thing has been like life-changing for me. I mean that in all honesty. Like started with cold showers. Now it's like, just finding like actual time to either get into an ice bath or get into the cold ocean. There's a bunch of health benefits associated to
Yeah.
it, but I personally just feel like refreshed and like a
Dude,
new
when you
person
get out of
after I
there,
do it.
like there's nothing like when you get out of there. You just feel like $1 million getting in and committing to it.
Yeah,
It's a whole nother story.
It's a whole other
that's
story.
another story. But I miss the ocean.
Mhm.
I miss the weather. Going back to answering your question, but you know, in Austin, we found something, the opportunity for something that we've wanted for a really long time. So super happy to be there. But those are the two things that California you can't beat it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to live in Northern or Southern California, but yeah, I mean, it's an expensive proposition, man. I think that's we were talking a little bit about this before we started filming, is like, it's hard to live here because of just the expense of living in those cities in San Diego, San Francisco, San Jose. I saw a chart of the most expensive cities to live in. This is like 6 months ago, right? And San Francisco is like up in the top right, like of the most expensive. San Diego is like a little bit justified left. It's a little bit less expensive. San Jose wasn't on the fucking chart. It was off of the chart. It was so expensive. I'm not kidding. It was like the X and Y axis. It was like San Jose's over here. So it's crazy, man. Like, I'm similar position with Gabe. It was like we found a place in Washington that we would have really never been able to afford in California right now. And we'll see what happens, you know, maybe coming back or moving somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, short flight, so we'll be down here to hang out, Jay.
It's a piece of cake. So we have this new initiative, Effort Over Everything, and we're really kind of, we're talking about shifting the Business of Fitness podcast name to it. And so back in the days, we had AMRAP Mentality Podcast, and that was my podcast focused on talking to athletes about the mindset and this idea of like the mentality for competing. And we had some great episodes. It was exceptional. Then we had Business of Fitness, and we're like 150 episodes in.
Business of Fitness started first, and then
Business of Fitness started
AMRAP
first.
Mentality came second.
And okay, so here's what happened. Business of Fitness started. I wanted to talk about the business of fitness, and boom, it's one episode a week for the last years. Then AMRAP Mentality came around. It was my platform to be able to talk about things outside the business of fitness, but it became too like overwhelming, right? You have, like I was telling you, you have the business and the family and all these other obligations. I couldn't put the time necessary into AMRAP Mentality, and I started building resentment towards it because I wasn't reaching my potential there, and it just wasn't working out. So we stopped that one, just basically stopped creating episodes, and we kept Business of Fitness. But the challenge of Business of Fitness is that sometimes I don't just want to talk about only things that are related to the gym and business of fitness. Like, for example, if we wanted to have even this conversation right now, is that technically the business of fitness? And so that's something, anyways, this is going on the Business of Fitness channel, which is why I think it's interesting to have a conversation about, because effort over everything is something that we really lean into here at NCFIT. And we pride ourselves in this idea of just putting in the work. And we could talk about things like the business of fitness. We could talk about things a little bit outside that, mostly all fitness-ish related, but not so pigeonholed into just the business side of fitness.
Interesting you brought up like the work aspect of it, because I had a conversation with Stu from What the Fuck Gym Talk a couple of weeks ago, and the podcast with me just aired on his channel. But creating content is a job. It really is, because there's work that goes into it. Although the production of it is fun, like having this conversation is fun, but you know, if you're getting guests on your podcast or you're thinking about the conversation you got to do your research. You got to be in contact with the guest. You have to make sure that you're setting everything up for the conversation, right? You have to have the actual conversation. Then there's the post-production type of stuff. So it does start to weigh on you as another thing to do week to week, especially if you want to have a weekly show.
Yep. And if you want to do it right? Like if you actually want to know, I think that was the hardest part, right? Is I don't like this idea of like half-assing anything, but it's tough to have like a really well thought out, curated guest with the appropriate like promotional material to have them send it out. And then having great questions where you really analyze what type of questions have these people not talked about before and how can I ask them in a different way? That takes time.
Yeah, for sure.
Content's so much work. I mean, even just committing to like posting daily on your Instagram channel, something that you've been doing a great job, but I mean, you just made a face. Like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Hey, so Post-it is coming out with a sponsorship for MDV.
I hope so, man. Well, that 3M money.
3M money. So, hey, speaking of 3M money, how do you go from 0 to 100? So, this is a good conversation to have real quick, because you were on social media. And I remember when we first met, not maybe when we first met, but when you first came out to California, like, hey, I want to build back my social media. This is like years ago, maybe like, I don't know, a couple years ago. And you did it for like, I don't know, a couple weeks, and then you kind of like just kind of died off. And then you didn't like touch social media for years. And then all of a sudden, the 3M sponsorship money came in.
Well, no, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here, Jay, but remember when I talked to you about social media when I first came on, I don't know whether or not I interpreted the message a little bit wrong on how you were delivering it to me, but like essentially you asked me, why did I want to be on why did I want to bring back a presence on social media? And I was like, man, I don't know why. I didn't have a strong reason why. I just kind of like thought that it was part of what I should be doing. And there was some other stuff involved in why I wasn't on social media, but I was off of it for like 3 years. And then the big reason why I got back on was I looked at my 2020 goals or 2021 goals, and I was like reflecting on the past 3 years or 4 years at NCFIT, and I realized I hadn't done everything that I could for this company. And that's the biggest reason for me getting back on social media. I don't want to have any regrets over the time that I'm spending building this thing and my own effort putting into it. Could I have done more is a question I don't want to ask myself if we get to a point where it's not as successful as it could have been. And that's the big reason. I wanted to put more into my voice, my message for the company, and make sure that I didn't have any regrets, because I was firing all cylinders from a programming perspective, coaching development perspective, culture perspective, doing a lot of things I thought pretty well, but I was doing zero on social media, and that was kind of not excusable for me. So that's the reason I'm back on.
Are you having fun with it now to an extent? Because I feel like a big part of you not being super involved before, and I know a lot of people feel this way, is like, social media is this kind of like double-edged sword. It's like, do I have to be on there? Like, it could be a toxic environment sometimes. Was that part of the reason why you weren't on it before? And are you like enjoying it now? Because it seems like you're really finding your voice and posting content that you enjoy and interacting with people.
If I'm completely honest, 50-50.
Okay.
I think everybody probably struggles a little bit with their relationship in social media and how much you put your own personal self-worth into how many comments you get or how many likes you get or how good you look, or, did somebody DM you about something that you put up? And I'm just like everybody else. I think that some of that is hard for me to deal with. But I'm also better at not making that as much of a focus, trying to make sure that I'm putting out things that I am passionate about or that I believe strongly about, and just seeing how people react to them. And that's fine. But there is still like this, was this the right message, or is this the right picture? Is this the right angle? Is this the right lighting? All that kind of stuff comes into play. And I think people's success or failure with social media largely depends on how well do they deal with those things or not deal with those things. So
yeah, it's a super slippery. It's a 50-50 game, right? Like, you could put something out and it gets good engagement. All of a sudden you can see your mood kind of shift a little bit. You can put something out, it doesn't get good engagement, your mood shifts the other way. You're like, dude, what am I doing? Like, why? And then, you want to put something out because you want to, but then you don't because you don't think your audience is going to like it. But it's like, dude, you should do it because you want to do it. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. It was Saturday night. It was late. I'd spent all this time smoking this big pastrami. And I spent a lot of time myself.
Okay.
So I brined this damn brisket pastrami for 6 days. I flipped it over in a cooler once a day for 6 days. I smoked it I got up, it was Saturday morning. I think I started the barbecue like, let's just say 5:30, right? And I'm all about this brisket, right? Dry rub, whatever. And, we have the coaching thing. I'm like running downstairs to see what the temperature is. And so finally I get it out and it looks good. It tastes good. I'm excited about it. I'm like, I'm going to share this thing on social media, right? Because I put a lot of work in it. I wanted to share with people, like, if you haven't tried doing a pastrami and you're interested in smoking meat, you should try this. And I remember telling myself, like, oh man, I never post about food. I never put a post about actual food. I probably shouldn't. And then I just told myself, like, dude, I'm interested in it. I don't give a shit about what anybody else thinks. If I'm interested, I want to share it with someone. If one person gets insightful and they get excited to go try it and they love it, we did our job, right? And I also wanted to highlight that Ava made a cake that was just bananas, where you cut into it and sprinkles fall out of the middle. I had never seen that before. So anyways, I guess that's the double-edged sword of a social media. And Gary Vee talks about this all the time. It's like, you know, if you're always putting out content that you want to try and, like, you should be putting out content that you're interested in. Because, you know, like, if you're just shooting for likes and whatnot, it's tough, man.
I think some of it also depends on how much of your personal life you want to share with the rest of the world, and whether or not you're using it as a vehicle to deliver a certain message, or whether or not this is just kind of a forum for you to talk about life. You know, the very different approaches. I don't talk a whole lot about my personal life on my social media channels very intentionally. I talk about fitness, professionalism in fitness and coaching, and training and tattoos. That's really it. I don't post about anything else. I just don't want to. You know, sometimes in the story I'll put up a little thing about like my dog or Mindy or my fiance or whatever we're doing, but like I don't like to open up my social and personal life to everybody.
Yeah, it's going to be different from person to person. I think where it gets even more complicated, and we have this conversation all the time, is when, you know, your business is kind of, you know, really getting a lot of traction from what it is that you're posting. And again, that doesn't mean that you don't post things that you're passionate about, but that means that there does have to be some sort of strategy approaching it where, you know, there's delivering value, and, you know, you're going to ask people to, you know, whether it's sign up for something or check something out. Like, we have a lot of valuable things that we're trying to put out at NCFIT. And with your channel having as much of an audience as it does, it would be a disservice to not be using it for that purpose. But yeah. I never envy the position you're in. And I know I give you a hard time about this all the time, but I don't envy the position you're in, because I know that you do just want to post about Brazilian jiu-jitsu and what's going on with the family and stuff that really fires you up. But there's that balance of like, well, NCFIT needs you to post about A, B, and C.
Yeah, and then how much do you... Social media is a very, you know, it's... Well, I mean, today, like, you guys are in town for this Effort Over Everything campaign, right? And we're going to go shoot some more content. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I think it's going to open people's eyes a little bit more into like what NCFIT's about, part of our culture, our core values, and this idea of just putting in the work. And so I'm excited to see how this one turns out, and really, really interested to see how the team gets inspired by some of the new apparel we have, and, you know, kind of the path moving forward. Because I think, I don't know, man, we're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm beyond fired up about the direction we're going, like what we're capturing here, and to be here. Like, for me, it's been exceptionally challenging to be away from everyone, because I personally, like, I really enjoy like rubbing elbows with the people I'm working with. Like, I think we've done a really good job, honestly, at like, you know, consistently being on Zoom calls, and like, I've been really close with the team that I work with. You know, I get on calls with MDV all the time, and sometimes we'll end up just like catching up on like the agenda is, you know, this thing, and we're an hour into an hour call and we didn't even talk about it. Like,
talking about bourbon or mezcal or what?
Definitely not bourbon and mezcal.
That's the Khalipa conversations.
But again, like, nothing replaces being able to just like be here and like mess around, get some work done. You know, there's so many great ideas that we've had that have come up, you know, ProDev being one example. Like, ProDev was born of us just being in the same place at the same time, being like, hey, I think this would be a good idea and super valuable. And it happened. And I do think that as a lot of teams move remote, you know, there's so much amazing brainstorming that happens when you're in person. So I'm glad that we're here, glad we're together. I'm glad we have 3 days that are kind of action-packed. I'm sure some really good stuff will come out of it, aside from just the content that we recorded.
Are we done with the social media conversation?
No,
I have a couple more questions on social media. I'll go back in. I got that back in. So do you guys think, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Do you guys think that business owners, people who have a legitimate stake in owning the business of a gym, do you think that those individuals have a responsibility to be on social media promoting what they do?
I can go. I don't think so. I think the business needs to have a page for sure. The consumer has just come to have the expectation. Like, I know I do this all the time. Like, if I'm looking for a gym, which we were doing in Austin before we moved out to where we are now, or even like more recently, an example, a barbershop to go get a haircut. Like, I know that now I not only look for a website, but I want to see if they're on Instagram.
Yeah.
And, see what kind of content they're putting out. Like, to me, how serious and high quality a business is for some things definitely translates to the type of presence they have on social media. But do I think the gym owner necessarily needs to have like a personal page where they're broadcasting stuff on the gym? Not necessarily.
But you think that the business
Yes.
should have a page, right?
I think so, 100%.
Yeah, I think the business. I think at this, it's like kind of like this is going to be far left, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, right? And it's like at first the internet comes around, it's kind of like this fringe thing, right? Where some companies have a website, some don't. It's kind of like this thing. Then after years and years and years, now every single company, if you don't have a website, that's weird. Like if you wanted to look up a barbershop or whatever, you would look it up on Google and you would go then identify it and you go look at their website to go find out their schedule or how to make an appointment. I think that same thing, and the reason why I brought up cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is I think that will be a thing 10 years from now where businesses will need to accept some type of cryptocurrency. Just like, imagine 50 years ago, businesses didn't accept credit cards, right? They would only accept cash or check. Then all of a sudden, credit cards became more common practice and people started using them more often. I think cryptocurrency will become more common practice. But anyways, back to the social media thing, I think that the business needs to have a social channel because that's a platform where consumers are looking for information. So it's another gateway to get people engaged with your content. And then I think they need to have a website for sure. But I don't think the owner has to. I don't think the individual has to.
What do you think?
I'm going to ask you guys another question before I get my thoughts. What responsibility
Is it about Bitcoin?
No, Bitcoin. Cardano, though. Invest in Cardano. No. What responsibility do coaches have to not post things that are hyper controversial, or how much responsibility do coaches who work within a business in their own personal social media channels how much responsibility do they have in posting things that don't put them in a weird place in what they do on a day-to-day basis in the gym? Because this is something that's really interesting to me, because you can have a personal social media account in which you go out there and talk about your views, whatever they're political, social, economic,
religious,
whatever views.
Yep.
But it does impact your perception, at the very least, to the people who follow you, which are a lot of cases for coaches, members or athletes or people who've come into the gym, or your peers or your owner. So where does this now lie in a profession where you have to walk in and now be in front of people on a day-to-day basis?
Man, I mean, that is a tough question that I know I don't have the answer for, but I do think that some things that help if you do have a team is to just lay out the expectations as clearly as possible in the beginning for your team of coaches. Does that mean that, that is something that is allowed or isn't allowed as part of being a coach of that organization? Just needs to be clearly defined. But it's tough, man, because especially nowadays, like, everyone has views on different things that they want to share, right? Like, we're all very vocal about things that we're passionate about. And you're right, like that is going to rub some people the wrong way. And if that's impacting the business that you work for, I would hope that a coach would have the wherewithal to like acknowledge that this might not be the best channel, because I know that it is detrimental to this business that I work for, that I'm supposed to be helping, right? And I would just hope that there's that awareness there. But I know that, we don't live in a perfect world, and that just might mean, as the business owner, having to have a conversation sooner rather than later. And then I think that, it varies from situation to situation. Like, is someone posting a video talking about something controversial, wearing the gym t-shirt in the gym, or are they doing it, like completely, separate in a way? Like, that kind of changes things too. But it's complicated.
It's super complicated. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, in my particular case, I am a non-controversial person in general, but definitely on social and in channels where people will be engaging with us, because I believe just like the business has no political, religious, etc. perspective, because it needs to be neutral to invite all parties to where. Because I'm an ambassador for the company, I need to be aware of that as well, that what you say does matter. And I think that as an individual, you just need to be aware of your actions have reactions, and your actions have consequences at times, and you need to be okay with that. Like, if you're going to go out there and be super pro whatever, that's your right, and you do you. But also, if the company has a specific social media policy and you're not abiding by it, or if you're creating friction or challenges for the business, then you need to be aware of what repercussions may occur for your action. Not saying you shouldn't do it. You just need to be aware of it. You know?
Yeah. No, it's just a really interesting topic and conversation for me, because obviously there's a lot of things right now that are going on politically and socially that, people have very divergent opinions on. And, there's stances that people will take, whether you're on the right or the left, that other people will look at as being outlandish, completely outlandish, like so crazy that you couldn't ever identify with what they're saying. That's neither here nor there. But I agree that I think that people need to be aware that, hey, if you're going to post this stuff, that there are potentially consequences that it can impact your professional life, your personal life, your social life, all that kind of stuff. 100%, if you're standing at the front of the room and you're talking to a class, none of that stuff, in my opinion, has a place in a neutral, positive, safe environment.
Yeah.
No matter how safe or correct you think your opinion is, I would say don't do that.
Well, people are coming into your class for a great fitness experience. They're not coming in for discussions on something else.
Yeah.
Right? It'd be different if you were a preacher at a church. Your job, that's your audience. You're speaking with that intention, or whatever. If you had a political rally, but if you're coming into a fitness experience, we want to provide people, like Patrick Umel was talking about for our coaches, like we want to provide people an exceptional experience and exceed expectations is the goal. And the expectation coming in is to get in a great workout, learn something new, have fun.
I agree with you, but I sometimes think that coaches within our space, and at least the people that I have observed over the years, sometimes there is this, I don't know if they look at it as like a privilege or like a forum where it's like their mic, their moment to say whatever they want at the beginning of class, whether or not that's like the comedy hour that they want to have, or they want to talk about something that's going on in the world, or cultural events or social events, whatever. Or like sometimes where I see this go wrong is you start talking about like a tragedy. We talked about this on a podcast, right? You start talking about a tragedy that happened, or you go down this rabbit hole and all of a sudden it becomes like really dark and weird, and that nobody is there for that kind of stuff.
No, we're there to have a great time, man. Like Patrick was talking about, we're there for a great experience. And that's what we're trying to provide here at NCFIT. That's what we're trying to provide through the NCFIT Collective. And that's what we're going to be providing through our new, NCFIT app. It's a great time.
I like how you weave that in.
You like the way I weave that in right there at the end? Well, dudes, we got a lot of work to do. We got a bunch of stuff we need to get done.
One thing that I did want to bring up.
Oh.
And then I got a rapid fire question for Gabe on animals.
Oh, that'll be fun. But real quick, if people haven't listened to yet, being honest here, when I saw that you were putting out a business and fitness episode with cryptocurrency in the title, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? I have to listen to this and like let me see what's happening. But I thought you actually had a great take on it, on just it being important to be open-minded. So if people haven't checked that out, I highly encourage that they do. I think you actually did a really good job. I was incredibly nervous.
What were you nervous about, bro? Are you ever nervous with me? I just
am I ever nervous with you?
I recorded that for the record, that cryptocurrency innovation and cryptocurrency conversation. I think I recorded it at length. It was like 7 minutes, so it's not that big of a deal. But I think I recorded it 4 times, and it's because each time I got a little bit like, you know what? I'm not hitting the points I'm looking for, so I wrote it all down. And speaking about time that you want to put in, right? But I want to make sure that it hit the mark where we have a duty and responsibility as leaders, as owners, as coaches, as whatever, to at least be educated on these things. Speaking of educated, what's the weirdest thing that you have experienced now being on a farm for the last month, 2 months, whatever it is? What is one thing about an animal that you did not know?
God.
Give me one really weird thing. So you talked about the wasps, like whatever, but like give me something about an animal that like people would not know about.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, man, it's like so many things. But I think one thing that honestly has been super surprising that I didn't think that, I would go through this is animals are so smart, man. And it's actually been fascinating. And it's been really cool to experience
Even
how
pigs
like,
and sheeps?
yeah, man. Yeah. They figure everything out. And it's been really fascinating because I went into it without that expectation at all. I thought, we were just gonna, have our animals on the farm and you kind of like, but they're smart, man. And it's been cool. And also like milking a cow is an experience that like I never would have expected was how it was, but it's super cool.
Can you demonstrate for us? Like,
We'll definitely not demonstrate milking a cow.
Oh man. All right, let's get to filming, huh?
all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Milking a cow. How long was that? An hour?
That was pretty long. That was good though.
I love those cows.